Tony D and Little Joan in the background, and this is a screenwriter's take. No, we'll call it a screenwriter's screenwriting tips. Screenwriting tips we'll do. And this is going to be about Avengers Doomsday and what it sounds like they're doing with it. Crossovers, scrapbooking, all that stuff. Now, I've talked on this stuff before, so if I'm repeating myself a little bit, please forgive me. Sometimes I do videos on the same sort of writing topics, but each time I try to refine it a little more. And Joan, you may hear in the background, she's pretty pissed off. She is mad because we're not going for a WALK today because there's thunder a brewing. So I'm a big proponent of staying inside during a thunderstorm. Anyhow, Avengers Doomsday. Now, this is Dave Cullen from the Dave Cullen Show. Very good channel. I don't watch his every video he does religiously, but once in a while he has a cool take, and I like this take. He's talking about Avengers Doomsday, and he's usually pretty up on pop culture, reads a lot of the source material, and so I have no reason to doubt his take on this. But basically, it sounds like Avengers Doomsday is being scrapbooked. And we've talked about this before. What is scrapbooking? That is when the producers decide, or director or whoever, decide, oh, we don't have a script, but we'll start shooting some scenes, and then we'll figure out a story around it. Now, why do they do that? Well, in Hollywood, it's basically they're trying to come up with cool scenes for the trailer. And that, now, this isn't a total 100% thing you should never do, right? You can shoot a couple of scenes for the trailer, if you have a big enough budget, because the trailer's going to go out first to start promoting the movie while you're shooting the movie, ideally, and you generally know what you're going to be in. But it does run into some problems. The first problem is, and I believe this happened in LA Story. LA Story, I watched the trailer for this, and John Lithgow, who I think was originally supposed to be in the movie, I caught a glimpse of him in the trailer I saw in the movies. I forget what I was saying. And then I went to go see LA Story, and Lithgow wasn't in it. Either his scenes were cut or he was completely replaced. I don't remember. So that is a factor. You don't want to shoot things too soon if things aren't nailed down, so to speak. However, and like in a comedy, and that was supposed to be a comedy, you can get a little... The closest thing you could shoot, really, with scrapbooking is a comedy. You can scrapbook quite a bit in a comedy because, again, the only rule is, as long as it's funny, nobody really cares. Even if the entire plot doesn't really come together, if people laugh throughout the movie, it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, for instance, you look at Borat. Borat has kind of a plot. I mean, it has a theme that runs through it and a sort of like a mission statement. But really, that is a movie that could have easily been scrapbooked, and then you could have shot a couple of scenes just to tie it all in together. But Avengers Doomsday is not that kind of movie. It's not. It's a movie that, although very convoluted because it's a comic book thing and it's a massive crossover, it definitely needs a plot, and it's very comic booky. But another thing they're doing, again, they're shooting cool scenes for the trailer. And so they hope that if you see Wolverine behead, I don't know, some character, the Hulk, you'll be like, oh my God, they're doing that in the movie. I have to see this. And then they have to figure out a way out of it, or, a way to justify that in the movie. That's not a great way to plot it. It's not a great way. And look, these sort of multiverse things have been done in comics before. They did it in Secret Wars, which is weird because this is Avengers Doomsday, and then the next one is Secret Wars. So I'm not sure what they're doing. Maybe you won't see all 60 characters in Doomsday. You'll see them in Doomsday and Secret Wars over the course of the two movies, which would make a little more sense. It would give a little more breathing room for these characters, but you know, just going in there with all these actors and whatnot and just shooting a bunch of nonsense and then trying to string it together is gonna be a problem. It's gonna be a problem for the actors. Imagine being an actor and saying, all right, just get up there and be Wolverine, Hugh Jackman. Go ahead, do some Wolverine stuff. We're just gonna shoot stuff today. What's he supposed to do? Like, these guys can improv, but if you have nothing, you need at least a suggestion of something that you're gonna do, right? You need at least, like, well, who's the villain? Like, why? Where am I? Who am I? You know, well, he knows who he is, but like, you know, why am I fighting this guy? You need something to go on, and this goes back to what I've been saying for many, many years. The screenwriters, who already didn't have much power in Hollywood, are being cut out of the entire equation, really, when you do something like this. You're essentially avoiding the screenwriter. What would the screenwriter do? Well, it's pretty obvious. The screenwriter would make the decision of who goes what and who does what. The screenwriter really makes all the critical, creative decisions in pre-production. All of them. All of them. The cinematographer can't do it. He's not there. Now, you could say, well, what about the director? Well, the director, acting as a screenwriter or an editor, standing over his shoulder might, but really you need a screenwriter to make these creative decisions so it goes at least moderately okay. Doesn't mean you can't reshoot a few things for whatever reason. Sometimes it's pragmatic. Maybe an actor has a health problem, or he can't finish a sequence and they have to cut him out. Maybe you just decide this is a bad scene. We tested the movie and everybody hates this sequence. We're going to reshoot it. Whatever. But at least if you have a screenplay that's mostly intact, you can just tweak it. It's not a pile of bricks. It's a Swiss watch when you're talking about a screenplay. It can only take so many tweaks before the watch doesn't work anymore. Now you might say, why do I know this? Oh, you know everything, Tony. Well, I do. But I did do a crossover of sorts. This is, and I think I showed this before, this is Knights of the Dinner Table versus Tony DiGerolamo's The Travelers special from 2002. So when I worked for Kenzer-Co, I was doing my comic, The Travelers, published under them, and they, of course, had Knights of the Dinner Table, and then they had Knights of the Dinner Table Illustrated. So for those of you who don't know, Knights of the Dinner Table are about guys who play Dungeons and Dragons. Knights of the Dinner Table Illustrated are about their characters in the fantasy world. So they're a bunch of crazy fantasy characters trapped in a D&D game, basically. And my characters were in their own fantasy universe. So we wanted to have a crossover. And yeah, some elements of the scrapbooking are, in it because we needed to format it in a certain way to, number one, fit in the comic. Number two, so all the characters could have their due, so to speak. So the way we structured it was that we had only so many characters on each side. Like I had 6 characters. They had, I want to say 4? Only 4 guys in the group, maybe 5. And then the gods, or gods, as they put it, GAWDS, watched over. And they had their own pantheon of gods. And the idea behind it was there were multiple pantheons of gods, and they got into a big fight, and these are the guys who survived the big fight. So like there was Zeus and Thor, so it was kind of a mixture. And Odin, that's Odin on the cover. So the plot of the comic is the gods are bored and they summon the travelers and the Knights of the Dinner Table Illustrated characters to fight so they can be amused, right? So that's the plot. And it's an epic battle. And again, it's a comedy. It's a comedy fantasy, but it's comedy. So we had a lot of leeway with it because a lot of it's just silly. A lot of it's just crazy silliness. But it's also fan service. You get to see the characters you would want to see match up. So here we have the two best fighters in the group matching up. I think they started it off, and then it went downhill from there. Uh, so yeah, to some extent, some of the elements can work, but we're talking for Avengers Doomsday. They announced 60 plus characters, some of which don't even have superpowers, like Aquafina's character. Who cares? But why are some of those characters in? Well, the additional element in Hollywood is the celebrity that's playing the character. So in the case of Aquafina, at least when they sign these deals, Aquafina, at least according to people in LA, I think, oh, she's a hot ticket. We're promoting her. She's at the right agency. She's getting all these projects. She was in a bunch of movies. I don't know where her career is now. So they put her in. Now they may very well take her out. You may never even see her in the movie. Who knows? Um, but there are actors like that. But then there are actors too who are playing characters who you might just need them for the story, right? So for instance, Heimdall was Idris Elba. I don't know if his character's dead or not, but whoever's guarding the gates of the entrance to Valhalla, they might need that guy. They might need him because they might have to have a scene where they go to one of the or go to Valhalla, although it got destroyed, I think, in one of the movies. Oh, excuse me. And but that would be an example, right? They're putting people in it like Tessa Thompson. And some of these people they're putting in because this is going to be their last hurrah as these characters, right? So they're all the Fox guys, I think, are going to be recast. All the X-Men from the Fox years, Marsden, maybe Hugh Jackman, some of the others, they're all going to be recast, or they're going to be reintroduced as whatever. Right, so maybe it'll be Marsden, but he'll be an older Cyclops. Maybe it'll be Hugh Jackman, but it'll be an older Hugh Jackman, but not super old. Who knows? But it's all about who's popular as a character, in the case of Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, and then as an actor. Now, Hugh Jackman's pretty popular as an actor, but I would argue his character's probably more popular than him. And it's not like his outside projects have really taken off, I would say. Some of them have done okay. And ironically, he's really more of a musical guy, which always cracks me up to think about. Wolverine singing a song. Here, I'm going to change the picture up a little bit. There we go. But you can only do... I mean, eventually he's going to age out of the character. He's... I think his long career as Wolverine is a testament to Wolverine as a character. He's always been one of the most popular characters in the MCU. If you look at the comic books, there are so many Wolverine comics. The only character that's probably more popular would be Spider-Man. And you could see how many Spider-Man movies there are. So it would be Spider-Man, Wolverine, probably the Hulk, and then maybe... something like Punisher or Deadpool or both. But you can only do so much of the scrapbooking in a complicated world like the MCU. It's probably not going to make a whole lot of sense. It already didn't make a whole lot of sense to bring in my view, Robert Downey Jr. to be Doom. Just didn't make a whole lot of sense. Unless you're going to make him in as some kind of alternate Iron Man, and then he's really Tony Stark, but he became evil, and then at the end he redeems himself. I don't see him doing that. They might. The Fantastic Four, as always, didn't go over as planned, So they're throwing them into the mix. They're going to be important. Again, they do this stuff so far out. They had to come up with, well, and I've talked about this. I've talked about they do these movies far apart, but at the same time, for them, it doesn't feel like far apart. Like when there's a sequel to a movie that's 5 years later, really, they're trying to crank it out as fast as they can. And when you think about it, I mean, Fantastic Four came out this year. Doomsday is coming out. Is it next year? I think it's next year. At the very least, 2027. That's not a lot of time for these guys. Sometimes 5 years, 10 years will pass. However, I think that's also the result of just the incredible waste a big production company, or big, I shouldn't say production company, a big studio like Disney has. Disney seems to have incredible bloat and waste. You only have to point to the ridiculous theme park disaster of the, what's it called, the Battle Cruiser, or whatever that giant Star Wars hotel was that they spent $1 billion with a B dollars on, and then they basically had to shutter the damn thing. They are not, in my view, making good decisions. And you can't make good creative decisions by letting corporate guys micromanage it. You have to make good creative decisions by, number one, picking good creative talent. That's number one. Number two, you have to trust them up to a point. Now, there are some creative talent, and you got to keep them on a short leash. I would put Zack Snyder at the top of that list. I would say, Zack, you got to listen to the screenplay. Your screenplay is no bueno, in my opinion. But visually, the guy is stunning. He makes great visuals. Even Rebel Moon, which I looked at the trailer and was like, I'm not watching this. The visuals in it, you can't say that they're terrible. They're awesome. They look so awesome. It just doesn't have the story to back it up, in my opinion. So something like Avengers Doomsday, you really should have looked to the comics, Disney. You really should have looked at the Secret Wars comic and said, can we do it kind of like that? Now, there are certain elements, you would have had to change, but basically you could have followed it, But they continue to do things, and this is another thing in Hollywood, where they add stuff to the MCU. Now, I'm always for new stuff, but you got to have your top-notch creative team on it. Not your DEI hires who don't know what they're doing. So one of the major elements, according to Dave, in the Avengers Doomsday is going to be the TVA. Now, this is the organization that exists somehow outside the timelines of Marvel, and they police the multiverse. Now, this has never been a strong concept, because all you got to do is think about it for about 2 minutes, and you go, wait a minute, who runs these guys? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's really representative of the studios who run the damn thing. And then the rumors that Doomsday is going to be in it, not Doomsday, Deadpool is going to be in it, probably are pretty true. I mean, Disney has got some issues getting people in the seats. And now that they own Deadpool, or at least control it, I think they own it. They can get Ryan Reynolds in there. Well, that could save the whole damn movie. That'll get you to $1 billion, probably. With Hugh Jackman in the mix, sure. But they're probably going to get an unreasonable amount of screen time in a movie that's really about 60 different characters. Some of which will have barely any screen time. I'm looking at you, Spider-Man. Yeah, I don't think they're going to give Spider-Man too much screen time, because why would they? And then how do they address that there's no Iron Man? So the whole concept just sounds, like Dave says, a total mess. They're shooting a bunch of sequences now. They're going to cobble together some sort of story. I don't know how you're going to do it. It's not going to be, The way to do it would be to go back and look at every movie and every comic and then really process that and come up with something so when those characters hit the screen running, and they would have to in order to get their 2 minutes in, they have a specific goal in mind, and you have to shoot that, right? You have to shoot that very tightly. A lot of them are going to be talking during the fight. It's the only way you're going to be able to have the fights and the exposition in this thing. In the comics, you would do it by just having a slug of the character's name and what their abilities were, right? You'd have Wolverine, mutant with regeneration and unbreakable bones made of adamantium, Professor X, the professor who can read minds and has great telekinetic powers. Like, they would just slug it, and you'd know going into your comic who everybody was. They can't do that with 60 characters, and they can't do that in a movie. It just won't work. Just won't work. There's just too many guys and not enough time to slug everybody. If you slugged everybody in this movie, 60 characters, you'd be talking like close to a half hour of screen time just saying the characters' names and what they can do. And nobody wants to see a movie like that. It'll be boring. You could probably slug it like the X-Men, the Avengers, whatever. But yeah, I agree with Dave. It sounds like it's going to be a mess. It could have been saved by a screenwriter. It could have been saved by saying, okay, we're going to hire a screenwriter or a guy who's written a lot of comics, perhaps. And, I wrote the Travelers Knights of the Dinner Table illustrated crossover. But I wrote the Travelers too, so I definitely knew those characters, and I was pretty damn familiar with the other ones. I also was friends with the artist on that one too. So that wasn't an issue for me at all. I knew the material very well. They did some tweaks to their characters, but it was on point, totally on point. Plus, I had worked with those artists too. For this, you have a lot of disparate people in Hollywood. Some of them have worked together. They certainly all know each other for the most part. But you're talking about a massive coordination. And then on top of that, you're just going to shoot a bunch of random scenes and then later try to cobble them together. What that's going to leave you with is a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor and a lot of stuff you wish you could have shot. Oh, I wish I could have shot in a 30-second scene to explain why this happens or that happens, and then we could have used that scene. May not be possible once you shoot a bunch of action scenes with an actor who then is very popular and has to go off and shoot something else. Or it's going to cost you. Or maybe he shaved his head for another role. Now you got to put a big Wolverine wig on his head and give him a bunch of makeup. Maybe he got fat for the role. Now you have to do a bunch of CGI to unfatten him. Who the heck knows? If you had a screenplay, however, surprise, surprise, you could just shoot what's in the screenplay. I know, radical idea, Hollywood. You could just shoot what's going to end up on the screen. And here's another radical thought. If you have a screenplay and you read it and it's good, then you know what the movie is. You know what it is. So you can greenlight it and say, oh, that's the movie I'm going to get. And then the actors and the directors shoot it, and then you get that movie. Or some slight variation of it. And you don't have to worry. Well, that was pretty good. What I read was really good. Oh, what I'm seeing on the screen is really good. Hey, surprise, surprise, it's a good movie. You should have gone with whatever you guys did in phase one. What you did in phase one worked. It worked. What you're doing now, scrapbooking, I don't think you did scrapbooking in phase one. No. You could tell. Because how did each movie end? It ended with Nick Fury saying, I'm putting together a team. Now you have to have some amount of coordination to do that. You have to have some forethought. So they knew the movies they were shooting. They knew some of the basics. Now maybe, again, a couple scene got cut here or scene got improv there. But for the most part, I'll bet they had full scripts for phase 1, phase 2. It doesn't sound like they have any script. And you didn't learn your lesson from Captain America. Captain America 4. The rumors were Anthony Mackie was screaming at the director saying, "What am I supposed to do here? I don't have a script." Sounds like a nightmare for an actor. What did they say to Anthony Mackie? Go ahead, just stand there and do some Captain America stuff. What's he supposed to do? Captain America is not a guy who just does one thing. He does a bunch of things. He's just supposed to run around and throw a shield at everybody? You got to give him a script. You got to give him a story. He's an actor. He's not a robot. This is not the way to make a movie. And it's especially not the way to make a crossover movie in which you got to somehow process a bunch of different characters from a bunch of different plot lines. And probably at the end of this, a lot of them are going to just die. Which, I don't know if that's going to be a good thing. I really don't think they should kill off any of the characters. Because you could always do some sort of multiverse thing and bring them back. And I'm sure they want that door open. But the multiverse thing is like, well, it's like heroin for creativity. The problem with it, and you could see that in Peacemaker now. So in Peacemaker season 2, apparently in the first season, or maybe it was earlier than that, they killed off Peacemaker's brother and father. But now he's switched to another Earth in which they're still alive. So if you do stuff like that too often, it means death doesn't mean anything. It means just at any time, oh, no, we're in another universe. Everything's fine. Yeah, you know that big story where everything was on the line and everybody was almost killed and you saw some of the best hero's best friend die and redeem himself at the end? Yeah, he's back. Why do you even go see the film then? If the stakes can be undone like that, then the stakes don't matter. It doesn't matter if that guy's going to die. It doesn't matter he puts a gun to his head and threatens to kill his girl. He'll just shift into another universe and get his girl back. We'll just shift into another universe where the gun jams. You can only do so much of that stuff. I know Rick and Morty had a good time doing it, but you saw what happened to Rick and Morty even before Justin Roiland's problems. I would say creatively, they were burning themselves out pretty quickly. Because when you could do anything at any time, at any place, in any universe, you soon find yourself with too many choices. And again, you know, if there's no limits, then your character can do anything, then there's no problem he can't solve, and then no problem is really that big of a deal. So essentially the Ring of Sauron in this case is multiverse stuff. And this has been a problem in the past. I don't know if you remember, they did the Lost in Space movie, and I think Gary Oldman played Dr. Smith. And they did a time travel episode. I mean, in the movie, they did a time travel thing where they somehow go back in time. Didn't really make any sense to me. I literally stopped watching that. That was one of the few movies I ever just said, I can't watch any more of this. It was so bad. To this day, I can't tell you how it ends. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 movies on my list of movies I couldn't get to the end of. I just bailed. That would be one of them. For that reason. It was just, you know, you're reintroducing the characters, and then you're going to go back in time in their history, which you just reintroduced. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You have to have, in the Marvel Universe, or in any universe, you have to have a fairly concrete timeline to do something like time travel or multi-universe, right? Now, you might say, oh, you did that in the Pineys. I did, but I have a very definitive timeline in my series. It's pretty solid. Hasn't changed. You know, I haven't been doing, 500 books. I'm only up to book 19, which I got to get back to. But yeah, you can do it, but it has to be rare. Everything you do should be rare. You should try to do something different. Um, you know, Marvel has already gone off the rails, I think, because of the DEI nonsense, and now they're trying to fix it using the multiverse stuff. You could, you could fix it like that, but it would require big sacrifices, and some of those big sacrifices means, yeah, we're not using this actor anymore. We recast him. Um, because ultimately, at the end of the day, in the world of Marvel, what the comic company always gravitated back towards was the main characters, the ones that were popular. Captain in Avengers, it was Captain America, Thor, maybe the Hulk, a couple others, and they went right back to doing that stuff, right back to the original team. Again, they would drift out and then they would come back. Marvel MCU has a different problem because they have actors, they age. And again, sometimes they get too popular and then they can't afford them anymore. This is why you got to recast everybody. This is why you got to stick to the story and don't worry about the actors so much. Fans, in the case of the MCU, just like in the case of the James Bond movies, follow the characters. And they follow them because they like the stories. But if you ruin the stories, you don't have the characters, and then it doesn't matter who you cast. Because celebrities certainly don't matter much anymore. So this scrapbooking is not going to help you, in my view. Dave also points to Star Trek The Motion Picture. He kind of calls that a scrapbook movie. I would argue that that might be true, but you know, it was 1980. That was still a time when Hollywood was in the mindset of, okay, we got to produce a movie that people will watch. Not, we need a bunch of cool shots for the trailer so we can send it over to marketing. Marketing hadn't completely obliterated creativity, and corporate stuff hadn't completely taken over then. It was still an industry about cinema at its core. So while they may have done some stuff like that and did more reshoots than normal for that time period, I would argue it is still about the story and trying to make it work, and not about what I think is clearly going on in Avengers Doomsday, which is a bunch of corporate guys micromanaging the movie to death. And again, you guys need screenwriters. You keep acting like you don't. But these guys make the creative decisions that now you're struggling with. When they're on the set, scrapbooking a movie, and everybody's like, well, I'm not sure how this makes sense. Why are we doing this? Why are we fighting? What's this? What's that? That's when the screenwriter should be, no, here's the script. Simple. It's very simple. You need screenwriters. You can't do it with AI. You can't do it with AI. I know you want to believe you can, but you can't. And the longer this goes on, the worse movies are going to be. And that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Joan, who's very angry. Thanks for tuning in. What's going on? I won't be doing an event till the 13th, but I'll be at Act 2 Books in Flemington, New Jersey for the Scary Stories Fest, where I will be talking about the Jersey Devil. Hope to see you there. We'll see you for the live stream on Sunday tomorrow.